dark dreamer? It is said that to best enjoy the light, you must first explore the heart and soul of the darkness. We are the artists who create in the shadows, whose dreams are designed to become your reality. I'm Stanley Wiater. Welcome to my world of the dark fantastic. Welcome to the world of dark dreamers. Are you a dark dreamer? Nancy Kilpatrick most definitely is. Nancy Kilpatrick has resided in Canada for more than half of her life. In that time, she has become acclaimed as the Northern Queen of erotic horror and vampire fiction. Beginning in 1974 with her first novel, Near Death, Kilpatrick has published a series of outstanding vampire novels, collectively known as the Power of the Blood series. Yet she is perhaps even better known under the pseudonym of Amarantha Knight. Under that name, Kilpatrick has authored a memorable series of erotic retellings of classic horror novels, including Dracula, The Pit and the Pendulum, Frankenstein, Carmilla, and The Picture of Dorian Gray. As Amarantha Knight, Kilpatrick has also edited a series of original anthologies with erotic horror themes. Nancy recently invited us to her abode in Montreal to discuss her undying passion for the dark. Nancy, we appreciate your inviting us into your home, and I'm just curious to know, is this really more of a lifestyle than it is just a career?
Oh, I think it's all mixed up together. I'm somebody who's fairly integrated in my madness, and so I'm able to write the world that I live in. So the two blend for me very well.
But what do you think people would say about this and perhaps misunderstand about this lifestyle?
I'm not really sure, because I don't hang around with people who would misunderstand me. You know, to get into my inner sanctum, my circle of friends, people have to have a shared aesthetic in a way, or shared love of dark, and somebody who's not interested in that wouldn't come here, I guess, so it wouldn't be an issue. But really what it is for me is an aesthetic that fits into a spirituality, which has a lot to do with darkness. I think that the main culture focuses very much on the light. People like to go out in the daytime, and there's nothing wrong with that. And especially when you're young, I mean, your whole world is focused on career, and it's focused on marriage and all of those things, and having children. But frankly, I think the culture ignores the dark to its detriment. I find the dark fascinating. If you go to a funeral today, what you see are people in brightly colored clothes who come in and they're going to celebrate the life of the person who died. When I die, I want people in black, and I want them crying, because I want them to miss me. I want them to grieve. You know, it's important to feel those deep feelings, and I think it's a kind of strange and kind of a form of modern madness that people ignore all of the sadness that there is in life. Not to say you have to walk around sad, but if it's there, it's insane not to feel it. And death is a very, very powerful experience. It is probably the most powerful experience of our lives, because we're not there really for birth in a conscious way, but for death we are. We know it's coming, and I think to ignore it is stupid. I started out as a demented child who watched a lot of horror on television and horror movies when I got a chance to go to the movies. The first book I ever took out of the library was called The Little Witch, and it's all downhill from there. So for me, I love the dark side, and vampires are one very strong archetypal element of the dark side. So for me, it's a natural movement. I have been a lover of vampire fiction for many, many years. I've got a library of 1,700 different titles. They're all vampire books. And because of that, I've read a lot of vampire literature, and I know what's been done, and I knew what hadn't been done. When I wrote my books, I wasn't trying to imitate anything. I was trying to go for something that was my own personal fantasy, if you will, which is, I guess, what writers tend to do. They're writing their fantasy and trying to structure it in craft it in a way that makes sense to other people. I thought that Anne Rice had done some interesting things with her interview with the vampire world. I also thought she did some interesting things with her DRACULA world. But what I couldn't understand is why she didn't put the two together. And I wanted to do that. So I came up with the pen name Amarantha Night, and I started a series called The Darker Passions. Actually, the first book in it was going to be the book called The Darker Passions of Dracula, but the publisher loved it so much he wanted to do a whole series. So it became The Darker Passions. The first book was Dracula, and then I took all of the classics of horror, or a lot of them, and tried to kind of rework them as erotica. So it's still erotic, it's still horror, but it's erotic horror. What's between the lines in the originals?
In terms of eroticizing a novel, how in fact do you do that? How do you eroticize a novel?
Well, I think the eroticism's in there already. Actually, Francis Ford Coppola did a lot with Dracula in the movie. Basically, he took, if you think about some of the early scenes, like with the three brides of Dracula, that's a very powerful and erotic scene in the movie. That's the scene where everybody in the theater is, you know, you can hear a pin drop, because that's an amazing thing that's going on. These women coming out of the ground and coming up, and the snakes and the whole thing. So that is what I was trying to do as well. I was trying to pull out scenes like that. In the book, Dracula, Stoker has it written that he's with the three brides, but you don't know what goes on. But you use your imagination, of course. And I was trying to say, well, gee, maybe this went on, maybe that went on. Could have been anything. So working with your imagination helps.
Could you tell us about some of your colleagues who are also dark dreamers who live here in Canada?
There's a lot of Canadians that write horror. They're not all household names, but some are, like Edo van Balcom is a big name. Charles DeLint, Seth Giron is getting to be. There's quite a few people that write horror, and there's been a really nice series of books up here called Northern Frights. 5 books in that series, which has profiled a lot of Canadian writers, so people who haven't had a chance to really get published in the States, because it's not so easy, have been able to get material in print up here, and those books have actually become popular in the US as well. I think a lot of people don't know what horror is about. People go to the movies and they'll see these slasher movies, and they think that's what horror writing is, and that's what horror is in general. And it is not so, and that's unfortunately the lowest common denominator. It's one that Hollywood spews out quite a bit, and it tends to paint us all with the same brush. So the thing is, horror is a complicated way of writing. It involves a lot of different elements, not just the physical or visceral. There's a lot of psychology, a lot of spirituality to it, and this is good horror writing. This is not everything that's in print, but there is a lot more good writing than people know, and unfortunately the films tend to typecast horror writers.
What is the greatest joy of being a full-time professional writer?
Oh, I get to do what I want to do. I get to live my life as I dream it. I get to create.
And the opposite side of the coin? What's the worst?
Oh, the opposite is always the same, where everybody in the arts has got the same complaint. It's always money. There's never enough of it. You know, I always say if I had a full-time job at McDonald's, I'd be better off. And it's the bottom line for most people. Because, you know, as Joseph Campbell said, a culture values certain things, and in our culture, you can see that in the tallest buildings, as Campbell said, and they are banks. Money is the thing that's valued. It's not churches, it's not usually living structures, it's banks, and it's money places, and that's what's valued. And so we're in a culture that values money, and we're in a profession where it's like farmers and fishermen. We're at the bottom end of all of this. Without us, there would be no books. Without a farmer, there's no wheat. Without a fisherman, there's no fish. But we are the people that get the least money along this big chain of people that it takes to get the books out into the stores and into the hands of people. In reality, life is not so organized and controllable as we all imagine. There are things that come into play in a life that keep you from doing the things that you'd like to do. People do get ill. They have relationships that fall apart. All kinds of things happen in a life, and those things impinge upon what you're trying to do. So it's not just a straight line to where you have to get to. Some people get that straight line for a brief period of time. They're very lucky. They're able to kind of, quote, make it during that little period of window of opportunity that they have, and then they can proceed from there. But for most people, life is just full of bumps and starts and pitfalls all along the way, and it's very hard to do anything, especially anything creative. And I wish more people lived their dreams, because it's as it should be. You know, within the basics, getting the basics out of the way, food, clothing, and shelter. Once you have that, you have to ask yourself, what is life about? And I think not too many people are existential by nature. And that, again, is odd to me, because I do feel that death is facing all of us at the end of our lives, and that's the thing that's going to be the big experience for us. And it's something that we're moving towards, and it brings into question other things. How did we get here? Why are we here? Where are we going? And those questions are big questions, and it's not that people need to dwell on them 24 hours a day, but at the same time, to ignore them seems kind of strange to me. I don't understand it. And I think that that kind of way of living is how I have always lived. I've always asked those questions. I've had those curiosities. I've wondered those things all my life. And it's a dark way of being. It's not the people of the light. It's the people of the dark who are focused in that way. Because I'm focused in that way, I go a certain path. But overall, I have an enviable life. I really do. And I thank the fates for this. I don't know why me, but here I am doing it.